Hello everyone, I hope you're having a good time. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Glaze, aka the IT guy, and today you're going to see three types of programmers, and we will see on how to make pagination by using HTML, PHP, Bootstrap, jQuery, and MySQL. Actually, I was talking about three types of programmers. The first programmer is this one, the programmer that will implement this logic and can do this thing like this one that has the clear look and to look like good. And there is the second one who is like this one. He's the one who makes all the kind of messy stuffs like this one. You can see that I can scroll over and over, and the data representation here is not as clear as it can be. There is also the third one. The third one is now the programmer who were able to achieve this, who were able to pull data and display them on the interface like this one, but he or she wants to improve the representation by using this approach. So we are going to make the approach considering that we are the third programmer who want to improve, but the second one who uses this approach, it is not a good approach. So enough of talking, let's go straight to the point. And in this tutorial we will need to get the CDN for jQuery so as to be able to use it, and for the Bootstrap. So I'm going to prepare my document. I'm going to go in the VS Code, and the quick thing, I have the source code of this project and how I implemented it. They are available on my Patreon page, so you can go there and get them by supporting the channel from my $1 a month, I think. All right, so let's go and create a new file. I'm going to call this let me call it list.html. I'm going to give it the extension of HTML to be able to quicken our stuff. So I'm going to use the this boilerplate. So I'm going to change some stuffs. I'm going to call this user list, and after that I will see that all things are already in here. So the next stuff that we're going to do is to acquire the CDN for the Bootstrap and for the jQuery. So to do that, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put Bootstrap, Bootstrap, and I'm going to make CDN like this, and I will be able to get the CDN from Bootstrap. So I'm going to choose this, and the speed will depend upon your internet, so you have to wait. After that, you can come down here. There will be two types of CDN. They will be for the CSS only and for the JavaScript. So I'm going to acquire the CSS only because I think I will need the CSS only. So I'm going to go ahead and paste it below here, and I'm going to save. And the second one that we'll need will be for jQuery. I'm going to go ahead and type jQuery CDN like this, and I will go onto the official website to get a CDN. And in this case, I'm going to take the minified one, this, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to do the same for this page. And so let's go down here, press enter, and in that case paste it here and save. All right, so to test if now this is working, we can, for example, make a button like this one, and you can give it one of the Bootstrap class, for example btn success, to see if it will bring the button. So I'm going to say click me, and when you try to access this, I'm going to access this via REST PHP. Right, you can see that it was not able to be seen because it is still HTML. I forgot that. You can see that it was able to detect the class from the Bootstrap. All right, so here we go. After doing that, we need to prepare the page so as to be able to have a clear format on how the data will be represented. So the first div that we are going to do is for the container. So I'm going to go ahead and type div and press enter so as to be able to close it and have a clear space to input your code. I'm going to make it as a container. All right, and after the container, we also need to implement the laws. As you know, in the Bootstrap to use like 12 laws representation. So I'm going to make a new div for the law, and I'm going to press enter again, and the div for the law, I'm going to give it a class of law. Okay, and after that, inside the law, this is where we are going to also input the div for the title, on where we will input our title. So I'm going to make another div, and I'm going to give it a class of let's say we want the text to be in the center. Right, but before we do that, let's try to make the div for the columns, because the text will be also in the column. So I'm going to make it like core, and I'm going to say like let's see MD12 to use all the space. And after that, inside this div, this is where we're going to input the text, and after the text you can go ahead and implement other stuffs. So the div text will be like this one, and I'm going to give it a class of text center, this one, and inside this div, this is where we can input our text. So I'm going to go ahead and choose, for example, h3. I'm going to say pagination using HTML or using Bootstrap, Ajax, PHP, OOP, and MySQL. Right, MySQL. All right, like this one. And after doing that, you can go ahead and make sure that the div are balanced. As we open the one, it was closed automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh. And you can see that I am having the text, but you can see that it is now stuck on the top. There is one tweak that we can do to make it very realistic. And I'm going to add the margin as a 4. And I hope the margin of 4 will give this as cool as this. You can see that I was able to leave a little of space up here so as to be able to see what's clearly going on here, guys. All right. And after doing that, we need also another div that we really have to contain our data, like this one. This is now the div after this, after the end. This div ends here. We need another div like this to hold all this data. So I'm going to go ahead below this div. I'm going to make another division, and this division will be the one that will hold our data. We will give it the ID, and we will try to initialize the data by using the ID that will be given to this div. So I'm going to go ahead and make this div, and the ID of this div, I'm going to call it ID equal to, for example, let me call this pull data, as it will be able to pull data from another file, and you will see that in a moment. So after doing this, this is where the data will be displayed. In this div, I'm going to make this as a comment, and you have to imagine that whatever you are going to do, this div will be the one that will contain all the data. And you know that this div is the child of this column MD12. So it will mean that if you want to change about on how long you want the table, you can tweak here, and it will affect this div because it is inside the parent div. All right. So after doing that, you can go ahead and try to implement some JavaScript. And the JavaScript that we're going to use is very simple. Anyone can do it when you follow me on how I'm going to do it. All right. And in here, below this div, I can go ahead and press enter. This is where I'm going to open my script tag to be able to tell this document that we're going to need some of the JavaScript. And inside the JavaScript, we have to make a function that will be used to fetch data. And I'm going to make this as a function, a function. I'm going to call this fetch data, a very descriptive name. And the data that it will fetch will be the page, and I will show you in a moment on what that means. And I'm going to open this. After opening this, we are going to initialize the Ajax. To do that, I'm going to do like this one and put Ajax. And after Ajax, I'm going to go ahead and open the brackets like this one. And after opening the brackets, I can go ahead and put in some curly brackets inside to be able to initialize the parameters that will be needed by this Ajax. And the parameter number 1 will be the URL, and the URL will be the documents that will be able to handle what you're going to do. In this case, I'm going to make another document, and I'm going to call this, for example, let me call this so how can I call this? Let me call it fetch .php. Okay, I hope it will never interfere with our code. I'm going to go ahead and call this fetch.php. And after doing that, after specifying where we will get our data, and I'm going to specify also the method, and the method will be post method, as we'll be posting there like there. And after that, we can be able also to distinguish the data that will be sent. And in this case, I can go ahead and like data like this one, and in the data I'm going to open this. I'm going to open like this one and delete this because we made a mistake. Okay, in the data we will specify the data that will be sent, and in this case it will be page, and it will be also page. All right, cool. And after doing that, you can go ahead and clear our code so as to have a clean workspace like this. And after doing that, let's say that we implemented our function and it was successful, and that's where we are going to implement the success function. And I'm going to put this colon, and I'm going to call another function, and what this function will do, it will try to retrieve the data, and I'm going to open and implement other stuff here. All right, and inside this success method, we are going to initialize the div that we made here on the pull data, as it will be identified by this ID. So I'm going to do like this one, pull data. All right, and it will try to replace the HTML with the data that will be sent from the server. Okay, I hope you are getting this one very easily. All right, so after doing that, you can see that the function starts here and the function end here. You can observe it by counting the brackets, and you can see that there is no problem in here, or brackets are crossed. So in this case, after doing that, we can go ahead and try to access our function, because we need to initialize the initial state before we load any other data, and we need to write this function here to be able to make the initialization, and it will also be able to replace this after we do the post request. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and implementing the listener, because as long as we'll be having this, you can see that you have the quick listeners in here. So I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to go back here to never mislead you. I'm going to try and implement the listeners. To do that, I'm going to use this selector, and I'm going to select the document, and in the document I'm going to say on, and I'm going to say the click as it's a click listener, and I'm going to put a comma, and what it will listen to is the class that is called page item. And if you are familiar with the Bootstrap list, and you can see that the page item will be now the class that will be given to that, and we say that if we click on the list like this one, it will listen to that, and it will be able to listen by using the class that we will set. We'll set this later when we are going to make sure that we pull our data. So this is where now it will be able to listen to that. After it listens to that, it will also implement the function that will be able to get the ID and to set the ID on where we will be able to distinguish which page to be displayed. All right, I hope you are getting this. So I'm going to make a variable, and I'm going to call this page, and this page will be equal to this, because we're going to point to this object. And after pointing to the object, we will use this at, and I'm going to point to the ID. And don't worry if you are seeing that I'm using the data here that are not defined. We define them in the file that we're going to do. All right, and as I told you that we need to initialize the page before we do anything here. We have to also initialize another page when you click the button. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and fetch data for the second time, or the million times, depending on the amount of data that you have. And I'm going to input the page, because we'll be fetching the data from the page that we will also be able to click on. All right, I hope you are getting this. And this is pretty much it for the JavaScript. So we're going to implement the logic in the other file that we called the fetch.php. And make sure that you don't have any errors in here. And on this point, as we are having each and everything set up, you can go ahead and change this list.html to list.php, so as to be able to have a clear meaning by using these files, because jQuery only works in the server. So if you don't change this, to not be recognized. So all right, enough of that. So we're going to go ahead and go in the fetch, and in the fetch, that's here the fetch.php file. That's where we are going to fetch the data. So I'm going to go ahead and see where the fetch is. This is where it is. I'm going to go ahead and open the PHP and close it. After doing that, this is where we're going to implement other types of codes that will help us to get what we need. First of all, I'm going to require ones, because there is the method that I use to access the database. But before we doing that, we are going to start with the other codes. We're going to establish the remit. This is now the remit of the records that you will need on the page. For example, let me say I want the limit of 5 pages per page. All right, and I'm going to say that page will be equal to 0, and this will be the initialization of the page. And we will need also the display, that will be now the other kind of div that will hold all the data that will be displayed in the pull data div that we did. And the display will be equal to empty string, because it will contain a string. All right, and after the display, we are going to implement the post method. If we do the post, and we do that by using if is set. And I'm going to put this, and I'm going to say if is set to, and I'm going to say post, and I'm going to put in a what we will post the page, right? And if it's based to fetch the page, it's going to do like this one, and you are going to set the page as a variable to the page that we fetch from the post request. So I'm going to say that it will be this post, and I'm going to put in the page. All right, cool. So I'm going to put a semicolon here, and when it didn't post, we will suppose that the page will be equal to 1. All right, so as to be able to start from 1. Okay, 1. Okay. All right, after doing that, and we can initialize on where to start from, and I'm going to make a variable that is called start from. This is where now it will start, and I'm going to implement this by taking the page, the actual page, and I'm going to -1, and I'm going to multiply the limit that we don't want to exceed. All right, after doing that, we are going also to implement the database. And to implement the database, there is a special kind of method that I predefined myself. So I'm going to give you a quick overview on how I did that. Inside this app, this is where I have all my configurations, and I configured my database as this one. I configured my user as this one, and the host as the localhost, and the password is empty. This is the configuration file. And after the configuration file, there is also another file that I did in here that is called database, and this is where I did all the kind of stuff. First of all, I used this connection by using these parameters in here. You can implement any kind of connections or on how you deal with the database, but I used the different approach because I found this as very legit. And the method that we'll be calling will be get lows. For example, let me say there will be this get low as one low, and for the get lows, and if you see that I'm using get lows, you will be able to distinguish that I'm using the predefined method that I did on my file. So you can see that I was able to fetch the associative array as I'm using OOP, or object-oriented programming. So after doing that, all this configuration, I made a variable that is called DB as a global. And this DB will be accessed whenever I am in this project. So to access this file, there is another file that's called the Bootstrap. It will try to load all this kind of stuff. So I will be able to call the Bootstrap, and it will be able to load all these files. So don't complicate this. If you have another approach that you use, you can use it. There is no problem. So in this case, to be able to access those kind of predefined method that I did myself, I will try to require that once, and it will be in app. All right, and it will be in Bootstrap. All right, or I can go ahead and copy whenever I have this, because I do have I do have this kind of stuff, so I don't want to think too much. So after requiring this, I'm able to know that I can have all the methods that will be there. And the thing that I'm going to do is now to fetch the users. I'm going to make this as users, and I'm going to say that the users is equal to, and I'm going to, of course, connect it to my database. And inside my database, I'm going to access the method that is called get lows like this one. And inside the get lows, this is where I'm going to input my query, and I'm going to say select all from users, and I'm going to order by ID, and I am going to limit by starting from, and I'm going to go to the limit. All right, and you can see that we're able to do that. By doing this, I can fetch the associative array from the database, and I can have it in my users variable here. And to check that, you can go ahead and check it by using the var dump. This is a very important thing that to do if you want to check if you are getting the data as expected. You can go ahead and use the var dump and go ahead and try to exit, because if you want to execute one piece of code, there's no need to continue the execution. You can do like this one, and you can see that we have an error, and where this error is coming from, it's coming from here. So I'm going to cross this, and you can see that the error is gone and the editor is happy now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call the fetch.php, and you can see that it was able to return this associative array, which means that you are getting the data that we need. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, or we can comment this because we will need them while debugging or see what's going on when you're trying to access the other data. All right, so I'm going to also count the users that I have in my database. So I'm going to call another variable that's called count users. Count users, come on. All right, it will use another predefined method that I have. As I told you, I begin by pointing to the DB, and I'm going to use this get sum. And what this get sum will do, to try to return the sum of the lows on where I would point. So I'm going to use this as select count, or I'm going to use the uppercase later, and I'm going to count the ID from users. All right, and in this case, we will be able to know that we have this amount of data in our database. So I'm going to go ahead and try to observe if it was able to fetch this. Okay, you will excuse me, I'm including the part of debugging in this tutorial because I know that many people struggle with that. You can see that I was able to get the integer of 32. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to comment this out, and you can continue the execution. Don't worry if you see the code are getting messy. We will try to clean up when we are done, but in this case we are trying to achieve something, and we are trying to build something. So that's why we are going through this all kind of mess. All right, so after doing that, we can be able to initialize our display, and the display will be like an HTML element, but it will be implemented in this way. So I'm going to say that the display by concatenating with this, and I'm going to put this, and I will say that it's a string, and after the string I will be able to close this, and inside this string, this is where I'm going to implement some of the HTML codes that will be displayed on the ID that will be specified in the document when we were starting out. I'm going to press tab to have a view of the indentation in here. So I'm going to make a div, and I'm going to give it a class of a table responsive. If you know how to do table, you can be able to do like this one, table responsive. And after doing that, you can press enter, and inside the table we need also the other elements that make up the table. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the table row, and as a matter of fact, you can go ahead and close it here, so to be able to distinguish where the low end. And in this case, I'm going to put the th as the table header. I'm going to close it right here because you have to be closed right away, and I'm going to call my variables from the database. And the first one will be the names of the user, right? And after the names, we're going to go ahead and put the phone. You need the phone too, and you can go ahead too, and I'm going to fetch the status. Okay, we need to know if the user is active or deactivated or any other thing, and you need to know the lore of the user, because we can have like a lot of users in the same database but with different lores. All right, after doing that, we were able to insert this HTML element, but wait, we didn't close this div and it is still open, and we are still adding other things, but we are going to add those things according to the logic that we're going to implement. So I'm going to leave that like that, and I'm going to count if we have now count users. For example, let's say I'm going to check if the users are greater than 0, because we don't need to keep sending the requests if we don't have anything in the database. After doing this is where now we're going to say we're going to iterate to the user. We're going to go through the associative array by using for each loop, and I'm going to say for each users as, and I'm going to say user, and inside this is where I'm going to implement now the display on how the data will be displayed. So bear with me, because we're going to make this as soft as easy so as to be able to catch up. And after we were doing this, we didn't close the div, which means that the display was containing this data, and we're going to go ahead and try to append or to add another data to the display so as to be able to have a complete element. So I'm going to go ahead and call the display again. Okay, after calling the display, we say that display concatenate, it will be able to the string itself, and after the string we are going to put this and do like this. We know that the string starts here and ends here. So inside this is where we're going to put our data, and to do that I'm going to go ahead and do the tiara. After doing the tiara, I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to do like this one. Okay, and inside the tiara I'm going to put in some table data, and to do that I'm going to indent for a bit, and I'm going to put in some data, and to do that I will do like this one and put this, or I can do it and close it so as to avoid having some issues. And after doing this, we're going to say, okay, inside the table data I'm going to put in these two, and I'm going to use the variable, and I'm going to say, okay, let me call the user, and after calling the user I'm going to call the names. All right, and double check if you don't have any error. You can see that it was complaining. It is because we didn't put another concatenation. So when you save, you can see that it is not happy either. So let's see where we messed up. So yeah, we were supposed to have this and this. So let's see where we made a mistake. This is where we messed up. We didn't close here, and when you do that the proper way, you can see that our editor is happy. All right, so I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste. After pasting, I'm going to change for the phone, and you can do pretty much the same, and you can change the variable to the specific variables that you need. I'm going to put the status, and lastly I'm going to put the lore. All right, good. And in this case, we are having the element that contains all this data. It contains this by using and adding this through the iteration that we did on our associative arrays the array that we fetched on here. So we can continue with other thing. So we were in the if block that ends in here, which means that these all kind of stuff, so this iteration will be performed when the condition is true. When it's false, it will perform the else, and in the else statement, this is where we are going to concatenate other stuffs on the display so as to be able to inform the user what's going on. In this case, we can say, okay, hey display, can you come back please? And to come back, and you are going to say, hey, we didn't see any data, please can you inform the user. So it will do by doing this. We can go ahead and make some one of two indent spaces, so to have to be able to have a clean workspace here and to understand what's going on. I'm going to do tiara. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to put in the table data in here because we have in tiara, and we are going to put some data, and we are going to say, oops, there is no data found. Okay, you can do this, and you can put your custom message or alerts or anything that you need to inform the user that happened, and you can tell the user, oh, what's happening, this is now what's happening. Okay, all right, so after doing that, we can go ahead and see what's missing. You can see that we were able to open the div in here. This is the opening number 1 and the opening number 2 for the table. And we can see that we forgot one thing. We did open the table, but we did div, but we didn't open the table, which is strange. But as long as we have seen it, we can go ahead and open it again here. Let's say table, and after doing this, I'm going to put in the class as a table. Okay, all right. And I'm going to press the tab so as to have a bit of indentation, and I'm going to indent this too so as to have a clean code like this. You will excuse me, I don't know how I forgot that, but I remembered that I forgot that. Right, so after doing that, we are going to go ahead and close our div. As we open them, we need to close the div too. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and call the display again, because the display will be the one that will contain all the data that we will be using. So I'm going to say, hey display, please can you go ahead and concatenate with this, and it will be given this data, and I'm going to do like this. And inside the display, you can go ahead and concatenate the closing for the table and the closing for the div. Okay, cool. After doing this, you can go ahead and implement that kind of stuff. In here, we were trying to get the data and display them on the table. So I'm going to go ahead and implement the pagination logic. This is where now the magic happens, because we're going to see a bunch of stuff that are very tricky. So to do that, I can first count the rows that are in the database. As long as we were having these as count users, you can go ahead and copy this variable here, and as we need it here, I can go ahead and call it however we need, so as to be able to differentiate them, because they can mess things up. So I'm going to call this as total rows, right? As total rows, and total rows will be the sum from the users, and it is pretty much the same like we did, but we had to. So I'm going to calculate the number of pages per page that we did, or the total pages. Let me say the total pages. Okay, I'm going to call this total pages, and this will be equal to the total. I'm going to total rows, and I'm going to divide by the remit, of course. And because there will be some cases when we have a number that are floating, you can go ahead and use this here so as to have a whole number like this one. And after doing that, you can go ahead and say, okay, now after doing that, you can call the display again, because we are ready now to display the pagination in the bottom of the page. As we ended it here, you can go ahead and also append other things to the display, and I'm going to do like this one, and press enter, and I'm going to indent like always. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to try to call the UR class, or the unordered list class from the Bootstrap, and I'm going to say like, okay, let's go ahead and say UR class, and it will be now the pagination class will be equal to pagination. Okay, tried to make this simple. So if you want to make like advanced stuffs, you can go ahead and implement your stuffs, but the logic is the same. Whether you use any programming language, you can implement this. Okay. And after doing the pagination, this is where it ends, like here. Or if it's a single element, there's no need to go down here. I can make it like this one. Very simple. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and check if now the page is greater than 1. So I'm going to say if page is greater than 1, and in this case you are going to implement something when the page is greater than 1. So in this case I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to set the previous page as a page, the current page -1. As long as we have the page as long as we have the page greater than 1, there's no problem. We can decrement it by a -1 so as to have a previous page. I think you are now getting the idea. And in this case, we're going to call the display again, and we have to concatenate this guy. And I'm going to press enter. And inside this is where we're going to call our list elements. And to call those, this is where I told you that you will need to give the class of the page item. So I'm going to go ahead and indent. I'm going to say, okay, we are going to call the list. But after calling the list, the list, I'm going to give it a class of page item. Okay, page item. And after giving the item, I'm going to give it the ID too, so as to be able to use the attribute that we used, and the ID it will be equal to 1. And after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and do like this. And after doing like this one, and I'm going to put in some span, pretty much like HTML code, class equal to page link. Okay, after putting the page link, I'm going to cross this, and I'm going to call this as a first page. Okay, and after doing that, cross the span and cross the list element. Okay, and we are done. After doing that, also I'm going to go ahead and to bring this up because we need to concatenate again. So I'm going to try to bring this up. Press come. Okay, and in this case I'm going to call again the display. So let's try to make this code green. Come on. All right, cool. Okay, now it look nice. I'm going to go ahead also to display the previous. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do like this display again. Please can you concatenate this data too, and say yes. So why not? I'm going to go ahead and put link, not link, it will be the list element class equal to page item like always. And after doing that, we can give it the ID, and the ID will be specific ID, as it will be like this one. I think it will be like this one, concatenate, and I'm going to put in the previous. Okay, this is pretty much of stuffs, but we are getting there soon. So I'm going to go ahead in here after doing this, because we were still in the link. In the list element, I'm going to go ahead and close the list element. So I'm going to go ahead and do like this one. And you have to be careful, because when you are using this approach and you make a mistake, it will be troublesome to spot where the error is. But it doesn't bring much of errors if you did it the way I am doing it. Okay, and after doing that, we're able to display the first page as we are having on this finish the project. When you go on here, you can see that I have the first page. Okay, and I'm going to implement the logic for the remaining pages. Not all the pages will be called first page or second page or whatever page or the many page. We need specific numbers for the pages, and to do that, we will loop through the page that we have seen as the total pages, because we don't need to have the page that we don't have. And in that case, I'm going to use the for loop. I'm going to say for, and I'm going to use the I as 1. Okay, we start from page 1 because we can't start from page 0, of course. And you can say also that if now this I that we assumed as our variable is less than or equal to our page, okay, and this is where now the I will be incremented. Okay, we're saying that if now the I is equal to 1 and I is greater than or equal to page, I will be incremented. And after now the incrementation of the I we need to set up the active class, because we need to set the active class for each click list. So I'm going to go ahead and open this block, and inside this block we're going to say that, okay, active class will be equal to empty string, because we are still in the initialization. All right, and we're going to say, okay, if again inside the if, this is now here of nested ifs, if now the page number is equal to the page that we are on, okay, we'll go ahead and say, okay, the number of I is equal to the page that we are on, and we will set that active class will be equal to active, so as to be able to make it as active. If we don't know what active class do in Bootstrap, you can go ahead and make a recap or a refresher on there, so as to be able to get what you are doing in here. So after we do that, this was the nested if, but we are going to come back to the if itself, and that if was the one that is going to distinguish what we are trying to display on the screen, and it is now the pagination itself. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, now down here in the if statement, I'm going to call the display again, and it will be concatenated with the new data, and I'm going to go ahead and press enter here, so as to have a bit of space. And I'm going to, of course, call the list element, and I'm going to give you the class of page item, and after giving it the page item, I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to do like this one, and concatenate with now the I itself, because it will display the I. And after doing that, you can go ahead and say, okay, now we're going to say that, let's say, now here, what did we do? Page item, and after displaying the page item, we can say also that the class is not page item itself. So let's try to put in the proper class. We'll try to bring the display. And after bring the display, we're going to say that class equal to page item, and after page item, this is where we're going to concatenate other stuffs like this one, because we can't close the page item without adding the data that we need. And after doing this, we try to concatenate with this active class, because we need to say that the class is equal to page item active, and after that we need to set the ID as equal to, and we're going to put in the ID2 in here, and I'm going to concatenate, and I'm going to put I, because it will be the ID that you really have to capture, so as to be able to do that. And after that, you can go ahead and close our element. And inside here, I'm going to do the span again, and I'm going to give you the class as equal to page link. Okay, after doing this as a page link, I can go ahead and inside the span, before we close it, I'm going to go ahead and do like this one. I'm going to input the I to be displayed, and I can go ahead and close the span itself. And here I forgot the other dot. I can go ahead and close the span, and after closing the span, I can go ahead and close the list element too, and you can see that we are done. Okay, and after doing this again, you can also implement the other logic. And we were in this loop where now we were trying to to make this list element by basing on the total page, and there will be also the time when the total page will be exceed or will be able to reach the end page. And to do that, I will try to make like this. For example, if I am having this as a middle one, I can access the last page and the first page, and when I'm on the first page, I can access the last page. So I'm going to implement the logic for accessing the last page. So to do that, I'm going to implement this. Okay, and I'm going to say, okay, if now the page, right, as less than total page, okay, we display this as normal, and you will say, okay, I'm going to increment the page because we're having the page as initialization. I'm going to increment it because it is still below the total page. And after incrementing the total page, you can go ahead and call the display again, and we have to concatenate some data in here. So after concatenating the data in here, I'm going to say, okay, I call the list element again, okay, and give you a class of page item like usual, okay. And after giving it the page item, I'm going to give it the ID. I'm going to give it the ID equal to, and inside here, this is where we will input the ID for the page, because we are trying to increment and decrement stuff here, page, and put another dot because it was not happy with that, with the error that we made. And after doing this, you can see that it is not happy with either, because we didn't, of course, put this semicolon. And after doing that, we also put the display. We'll call it again and try to concatenate with other data, because it is the one that will be handling all the stuffs. In this case, I'm going to make this as the last page. So to make this, I'm going to put in a list, and class will be equal to, and the class will be equal to page item and page item, and I'm going to choose the ID equal to, I'm going to put this dot dot, and into the dot, I'm going to call the total page, because it will be the last one. There is no other total page that will come after this. So after doing this, I can go ahead and close this. I can go ahead and make the span, and inside the span, this is where I'm going to say, okay, class to page link, and after that, page link, class to page link, and I'm going to call this last page. And after calling this last page, I can go ahead and close the span itself, okay, and close the list element, okay. After doing this, we are now ready to launch and see if now can be able to call these elements by using this. But before we do that, you know that we opened the another list up there. So I'm going to go ahead and cross this tag for I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, display, come on, it's now time to take a list. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to concatenate with this kind of data, and I'm going to say, okay, go ahead and close our another list, okay. And after doing that, you can go ahead and try to echo our display, because we are going to echo the data that we all concatenated in there. So when you press echo display, what will happen is that we come and replace this pull data as we did it as pull data, and it will replace with what will be in here. So we are ready to launch to see if it worked or if it contains some errors, and so that we can start debugging. So let's make sure that we don't have any code here that is not necessarily. We can clean up the code later on. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the list to see if it will work. See that it was not able to pull anything, so we're going to see where the problem is. So I'm going to go ahead and try to see here if it was able to get a page, we can debug from here. So let's try to copy this code and paste it in here. So let's try to display here. We're saying that from here the display was displaying, but when we reach here we are not catching anything. So let me show you when I'm in here, you can see that I am able to get this element and this, and but when I try to get, for example, let me try to get here after the execution of that, you can see that I'm getting the empty. And it is because we use the one equal sign, but we're supposed to use a double equal sign so as to be able to compare. So when you do this, let's see, it's still the same. Let's see where the problem is again. So I'm going to go ahead and save. So I'm going to fetch it right here inside. I'm going to fetch it here. So you can see that it was now able to pull this. Okay. So in that case, I'm going to go ahead and comment this out to help us debug the program. And I'm going to go ahead and save again and try to refresh to see if it will bring the error. And you can see that it was able also to show me the error here on 101. This is where, let's see 101 if the page. So let's see the page. So let's see. Yeah, there is S, but it was supposed to be S. Okay, you can see that I am able to navigate through this, and you can see I was able to access the last page, but there is something that is off in here. I don't know what happened. It is because, let's see, page item and the page link. Let's see where the problem is, because it is bringing me the stuff that I didn't expect to see. The last page had to have this kind of beautiful thing like it was in here. It was supposed to be like this. So let me go ahead and see where I messed up. Page item and ID is equal to this, and this span element cross page link. Here I write the ink, for God's sake. I'm going to put link like this. Right, so let me go back here and I'm going to refresh. I think it's here, and I'm going to go back and refresh. You can see that I was able to access the first page. When I go to the second page, you can see that the last page and the first page will be able to be displayed, and you can see that we were able to achieve what we need to achieve in this video. And the video was so long, but it's worth it. I had to explain how this is done, and as you know, we have been through the same frustration when we met with error, but I think it helped you understand what you are doing. So let me know, guys, if you have any problem. As I told you, there is the code that are well documented that I have for this. If you need them, you can go on my Patreon page and you can find them there. If you need any learning material as a student, or you are trying to use PHP as your programming language, I'm good in PHP and any other programming languages. I'm the right guy to call, so call me if you need me. I'll be here. So from now on till next time, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Remember to subscribe and to press the like button if you like the video. Ciao.